glad to welcome you here on the Inspiring Leaders series. I'm really inspired and motivated by how you choose to show up as a leader. One thing that stood out to me when I first met you and the consequent interactions we've had is just your humility. You show up really humble, in spite of the fact that you have such great accomplishments under your belt, such great wealth of experience. So I'm just really excited to have you here to learn about you as an individual, you as a leader, and just get to share that with the audience. So thank you so much for making the time to join us today.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, I appreciate what you're saying. And I don't think of myself in a certain way. I think people oftentimes try to create some narratives. I very much appreciate that you say the humility. I try to create it as authenticity. I try to be myself. So hopefully that'll resonate with some people. It won't with others. But Jumi, it's been a pleasure to get to know you over the years as well.
Thank you so much. So let's just dive into it, going to my first question. When you think about leadership, what does that mean to you? And also, can you share your journey into leadership? How did it all begin? Were there individuals that influenced you in that journey? Would you mind sharing your story?
Yeah, for me, it started relatively early. So I think you may be aware I was a young entrepreneur. Even in high school, I had a magic business, and that business was around performing. So from a very young age, I got into magic. I used to perform on the weekends, and then I manufactured three magic tricks. I invented three magic tricks, and I started selling them to distributors in New York. One was Tannen's Magic. At the time, there was this place called Hank Lee's, and on the West Coast, Sorcerer's Shop. And that's what I enjoyed doing in high school. That's how I paid for college, actually, was through this business. And for me, it was exciting because it was a passion. I got to do something that I really liked. Sometimes my teachers probably would have rather me focus more on some of the schoolwork than on my magic business. But for me, it really enabled me to think about those things. And I had some professors in high school who really helped me think about leadership in a really meaningful way. So not only like, what do I need to do in my business? So remember, I had a gentleman who was teaching economics and like thinking about things and how do I think about some of the business areas. And I was part of Future Business Leaders of America. And then I had another professor who was teaching humanities. And he said, Jonathan, I'd really like you to lead our humanities festival. I went to a small high school in New Jersey. And that was really a pivotal time for me because it was me like thinking about what I wanted to do. And I was really interested in humanities. And we brought back something called the Humanities Festival. They call it HumFest. And I got to bring talent and I got to bring different things that people don't think about from an art perspective, a humanities perspective. And we reignited this after it had been kind of dormant for, I think it was 10 or 15 years. We brought it back and the teacher allowed me to run that. And that was really, really, in my mind, sticks out as like my first real leadership was my business, building my magic company and the Humanities Festival in high school. And it really just, for me, it was important because I was able to bring this back. It was successful. People really enjoyed it. And that became really meaningful to me.
Okay, so would you mind showing us a few magic tricks? Maybe at some point.
Yeah, one day
So
I'm going to do that over a video conference. But yes, next time we're together, June, I'm going to bring a deck of cards. We'll do some magic tricks.
I'd love to see that. But as you were speaking, a few things really stood out. It is obvious that you started off by leading yourself. Because as a young entrepreneur, I can't imagine you getting from learning magic tricks to creating your own magic tricks and then selling those off and then using that to pay for college. It takes a lot of self-awareness and leading yourself to be that structured and determined, right? So I believe that all of those attributes in you were observed by your professors who later on gave you the opportunity to lead HumFest and you made it successful. So I believe that there are attributes or values that supported, or should I say frameworks, maybe unbeknownst to you, that you leverage to continue to be successful.
Just something there that's super important. Usually leadership is based on somebody else giving you a chance, right? It's not about me. It's about somebody identifying that allowing me to kind of break open. I was a pretty shy kid even in high school, people think of me as this very gregarious kid or adult. I was an introvert when I was a kid. I was really shy, and magic and being given an opportunity to go do those things was really important to my development, because that person who's seeing that brought me out. And I think that's one of the lessons for me, is like, how do I help others do that? How do I see that in others and help them drive that too?
Jonathan, that is a very important statement you just made. People or someone believing in you. You may just need that one person believing in you, or it may just be you believing enough in yourself and
Yeah.
being able to get those opportunities and learn from them and be successful at them, right? So, from your perspective and from your experience, can you maybe share some of the things that you have done to identify individuals with potential that you bring on board to your team, even when they did not believe in themselves? Because you've been very successful in building new businesses and companies, right, in the course of
Yeah.
your career. How do you select the people you bring on board? How do you ensure that even at the point in time when you bring them on board, they may not know that they're capable? How do you ensure that they grow into what you've envisioned them to be? Just like ideating for your company, you start with an idea and then you bring it to this amazing product that now is making profit. How do you do that with people?
For me, it's kind of interesting when I think about the people that have, really done well in my organizations. As you know, I started a company called Prevalent when I was in college, or actually in graduate school. I ended up selling that business and then going to KPMG. And at KPMG, it was obviously a much different structure, way bigger. And then we spun this business out of KPMG, and we're seeing pretty significant growth at Cranium. And I think throughout the stream has been allowing people to pitch what they believe will help us get to the next level and saying yes. I fundamentally believe that the constraints that we put here, in some cases, we obviously can't say yes to everything. When I see, even myself, when I was successful at KPMG, the reason that I believe I was successful is because others allowed me to have a very entrepreneurial mindset. And I didn't ask for hundreds of millions of dollars to start. I asked for enough money to prove that there was a thesis that I had, that we could prove it out. And then as we got success, we continued to invest in the thing that was successful so that we could continue to build it. And that came just from seeing if we could get something done and doing it. And I think for me, I've had mentors and bosses that have done that for me, and I try to do the same thing. So if you're going to be successful in my organization, you generally are someone who is interested and curious, where the mission we're on. So we talk about MTP, the massive transformational purpose, right? We want to secure the AI revolution. And that's been from the day that we started this business. So you have to be interested in that, but then you think about something that you want to solve that I can say yes to, that we can invest in on a small basis to prove it out. And then we can invest more massively in it as we start to see success. Nothing crazy, Jumi. I mean, that seems like pretty natural statement, but that's just been what I think has allowed me to really drive the businesses I've been involved in, or the practices I've been involved in, meaningfully. And then it's just all about the people and making sure that you're giving them good feedback, helping them understand what those pathways look like, making sure that they are well supported and they have the resources they need.
Thank you for sharing that. You said it's all about the people. How do you ensure that they're getting the feedback they need to continue to improve and be their best selves, right? And you are able to bring out the creative genius in them that will drive the innovation for your organization. So, can you share some of the core values that help drive your leadership decision making process?
So we have a set of core values at Cranium. In general, those align pretty well with me personally, and I'll talk about a few of those. I also think from a leadership perspective, we talk a lot about failure. It's a weird kind of scenario because failure hurts. Nobody wants to fail or feel rejection or go through it. I think the people that have been with me and want to continue to drive with me, many of them have failed. And we've had to kind of talk about that and put it aside and use that experience to help guide us so that we can learn and go and do better. But it is painful, right? So we don't want to feel that. So generally, the way we avoid failure in the big F like sense, we try to make sure that we're client centered, that we are doing things in our businesses that are going to show massive value, that we are doing things with teams that are diverse. You know, Jumi, you and I have talked about this in the past, diversity. And it's not just about race, it's really about everything. It's about the way we think, the people that are around us. They can't think the same way as us. We have to have a diverse set of capabilities and the people around us. And it's been proven that this creates better outcomes. In the environment we're in, that value is really important to push on, especially right now. We think about how do we drive excellence? And that word is very loaded. But what I generally think about is keeping our standards really high. We know that there are certain people that were built to do certain things, and like we want to put them in the right position. We don't want to put people in positions to fail, but we want to make sure people can grow, they can learn. And that standard, we keep that standard super high. And the people that are going to accelerate are the ones who want that standard high. They know that they're in a place and I'm going to help support them. And if they fail, failure's okay, as long as it's not terminal. The reality is, as long as they're meeting the standard, they're being curious, they're client-centered, and we're continuing to push forward, I've never seen it fail. The risks you take always pay off.
So obviously you've built an environment where psychological safety is part of your values because you have your people embrace failure, learn from it, grow from it, and be better from it, which just makes a big difference. Because when I think about my kids, the kids of this generation, I believe that they need to learn resiliency through failure because a lot of times they're being rewarded for everything. So failure is a good thing, right? Just from the perspective that you shared. So thank you for sharing that. So one question I have for you is, what has been the most rewarding and the most challenging moment you've had to navigate in your leadership journey?
I'll talk about the most challenging first, because I think it also gets into the rewarding. We're in an environment where a lot of entrepreneurs expect to go raise a ton of money and they're just going to run these businesses and sell. And that happens more than what happened in the past. But my first businesses were bootstrapped. We didn't have investors to rely on. If we weren't successful, like, we didn't eat. Okay? I think about these things where slightly differently, where the biggest challenge that I think entrepreneurs generally face, and I'm going to exclude the people who raise a lot of capital, is that in general, I found times in my career where there were times I didn't know if I'd make payroll. I didn't know. And if we didn't see the sales and we didn't see the business start to operate better, we had to solve our own problems, and we always got through it. And I think that really, that grit you're talking about, that failure, a lot of people aren't feeling that today. It's a little different in terms of the environment. Today, like this business at Cranium, we have great investors. We started very advantaged coming out of KPMG. It's just a different thing. So when I talk to entrepreneurs or potentially future entrepreneurs coming out of college today, they have a vision of this. And I kind of said to them, like, you really can't call yourself an entrepreneur until you've almost missed a payroll. And I will tell you, I felt that challenge. That was my biggest challenge. How do I continue in the face of potential fatality from a business perspective, keep pushing every day, get through it to that next step? The most success I felt, my father didn't get to see this. My father passed away. But when I sold my business, it was just a sense of financial freedom that, like, no one else in my family had felt. And so being able to share that with my family was really important to me. I felt that very successful. So my father-in-law kind of became my mentor and my father figure in that equation. And I remember I took him to get a bespoke suit on Savile Row because that's what he wanted after I sold my business. And I'll never forget, that was just an incredible time to be able to celebrate and do something for him with all the support that he gave me.
That speaks a lot about what you value, right? Giving back. and being able to make a difference in others. You sold your business and your family was what came first in mind, right? So thank you for sharing that story. In that period, or in the scenarios where you're dealing with challenges or even with success, what have you done to stay balanced, to remain grounded? Because as a leader, there are challenges you face, there are decisions you need to make. What do you do to stay grounded?
I think it's impossible to be grounded running businesses, being a leader, and having kids. Like they just pull you apart. But I obviously couldn't do any of this without great support. So my wife has been tremendous when we wanted to build a family. Obviously, the demands of running a business are really hard. And she's been the backbone through that, like being able to do it. So for me personally, that support was incredibly important for me to be able to build a family, have that, and that becomes critically important. I personally do a few things on a daily basis that I try to maintain. Exercise, I mean, everybody talks about it, it's hard to get in, but I make sure that I have a routine. So, exercise, I read every day. So, I track my reading on my Kindle app, and that's what I make sure I do every day. I think that's super important, that lifelong learning piece. I have a nutrition app. I make sure I'm eating well, and then I track my sleep. So those are the key areas that I focus on, and I track that every day. That helps me manage the stress levels. It gets really stressful, especially in this AI world where every month feels like a year. And we're dealing with business cycles that when I was running Prevalent or even at KPMG, the business cycle was potentially in years. Now the business cycle is in months. And I think we're going to get to a place where it potentially is weeks. I mean, you just see these agentic capabilities, and we need to keep up with that. That creates a lot of stress on how do we make sure we're pushing the right way. If we're seeing something, we need to change it. You have to always be on your toes. And if I don't have those other pieces, I feel imbalanced. So that's what I try to maintain.
Thank you, Jonathan. I think those are great activities that you have as a routine to help
Yeah.
you stay grounded. You mentioned something about high impact and stress within the space you're in. I think any space, right? As you lead people, you're thinking about the people under you. As a leader, you should be vested in taking care of those in your care. That's important as a leader. So, how do you manage the stresses that come to you and ensuring that your team is shielded from that, so that while they get the urgency and the vision and the direction, but they don't get that stress? I think it takes a lot of skill to be able to shield your team as much as possible so that way they stay focused on the goal. How do you get to do that?
Yeah, Julie, right now, it's weird. It's kind of the opposite of what I probably say is shielding. I try to be as transparent as possible. So there's a level of stress that I think we talk about, but is productive stress. I don't know how else to describe it. Like we're in this unique position to go solve these really big problems. And like I said, we have people on the teams that want to go after that. They get excited by it. It's purposeful, it's meaningful. And I think in those situations, when we're dealing with that type of stress, when it's meaningful for somebody, you're willing to run through walls, right? That is a different kind of stress than stress where you don't feel in control. You don't feel like there are things that you can do to change a situation, and you don't have a locus of control that is meaningful so that you can get to a point where you're comfortable. And look, in those cases, there are certain situations where I've been with people who maybe the pace is too high, maybe there's things, and we have to have a real conversation. Like, is this going to ever change, and what can I do to help? In this environment we're in, though, Jumi, like we're asking people to start running agents to support their business in a way that they've never had to think about before. This is just stressful all around. People are worried about their jobs. Am I going to have a job? But I can tell you, if they don't get the skills with AI and they don't meaningfully figure out how to actually operate in this environment, it's actually going to be more stressful because they won't be able to operate in the business environment. It's just that we're living in a very unique time. And so we try to create mechanisms for people to learn those new skills that they need, give them the resources so that they can be knee deep or neck deep, however you want to look at it, in the things that they need to do in order to make sure that they have the appropriate capabilities. And I'm sure you've played with it too. We're seeing incredible opportunities to solve bigger and bigger problems. And for the right person, that's exciting, not the negative stress. And then if it is negative stress that people are feeling, we need to surround them, help to get them through it if possible. And if not, create pathways so that they can get more comfortable. I don't think about that as failure. I think about
Right.
that as people figuring out who they are and what they want to do. But I think that the vast majority of people I talk to are excited about that future vision, want to help support the massive transformational purpose we're on, be on that journey and go after it. It's not bad stress.
That's great perspective. So, would you say that your leadership approach has evolved from when you co-founded Prevalent to now? Have you evolved in your leadership approach, or has it remained about the same, but just within a different context and environment?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think from the perspective of me trying to just be authentic and make sure we're dealing with problems, I think that I've tried to stay relatively same, but the experiences over time have changed the way I go about certain things. Meaning, I think of myself as the same person. I want to try to do what I see is always right. Sometimes this gets very murky, but we're always going to try to do that. I think the things that are changing are based on the pace. I try to create visibility and transparency on the things that we need to go do. And I try not to control the things I can't control. There's just a reality of the environment we're in, and we need to be realistic with those things. And I think people appreciate that. So I think I've changed over time just in terms of seeing bigger problems, dealing with a bigger business, being able to look at those problems slightly differently. And as I get older, maybe I'm not as excitable about those things I can't change. Like I used to be very worried about things and try to push on things, push the rock uphill. If it's something that is impacting me or the business and I fundamentally have no control over, I can't change, I worry a little less about that today.
Yeah, that's wisdom right there.
Yeah.
Thank you. So, do you have any tools that you use or resources that you'd recommend for up and coming leaders?
A couple of friends of mine, we used to share our top 10 books. So we had a list of like kind of top business books and then like top non-business books that we would share and then talk about. So maybe I'll update that for you. I'll send it out so you can share it. But I think getting different perspectives is so important. I do it through reading, and I read every day, and I listen to Audible in my commute just so that I can understand. I love history. I love reading business books, and I also like science fiction. So those are the things that generally allow me to keep sane, but also keep up to date around things that I'm thinking about. So I want to be a better board member in the future. I'm reading a book about how to better do board management now, as I want to make sure we have better governance in the business. And so that's an ongoing area for me, and one that I would highly recommend continue for people. Right now, most people don't feel like they can spend 2 minutes reading. You got to find the time. I think that lifelong learning pursuit is probably one of the most important things that allow you to keep up. From a tool perspective specifically, I'm playing with a lot of AI right now, obviously. I think being able to stay up to date and be able to make sure that you're getting support. I don't think these things are ever going to take over the human experience. They're gonna change the way we work. They're gonna change the way we live. All of those things are true, but I think being in it is important. Keeping up to date with your AI skills today, really important.
Right. That is spot on. You highlighted that continuous learning is important. The day you stop learning is the day you stop growing. So
Yeah.
keep learning, keep reading, keep growing. Do you have any advice for the next generation of leaders?
I'm not sure this advice is so different than what I try to tell myself or
Okay.
I've told other people historically, but it's if you really want to be really good at something, you should think of trying to become the best in the world at whatever you're most interested in. And I don't really care what that is. At one point, Jumi, you and I shared a passion around third party, right? We probably still do. I wanted to be the best third party practitioner and leader in the entire planet. I spent all my time understanding the problems, building around the problems, talking to people, making sure that we were ahead of that. More recently, I wanted to be one of the top AI security leaders in the world. What would that mean? What were the challenges? What are the topics? How can I stay ahead of that? And I think that's really getting good at something that people are going to know you for that you can really start to have a passion around. And it doesn't have to be something that's so enjoyable all the time. There are parts of business and parts of my life like that, they're meaningful, not enjoyable, but I love them because they're meaningful and I want to be the best in the world at them. And it's just hard. That's what I would tell people. If you want to be a
Okay.
leader, get known as being the best in the world at the thing that you want to be known for and get really good at it.
Thank you. So, how would you want people to feel after working with you?
I want people to know we're going to play hard, win, but we're going to do it being nice, right? Like we want to be known that way. Michael Dell wrote a book about this, right? I think there's a way to do business, and there are some people that disagree completely. People think, oh, you need to be really hard and you need to burn everything down. If you can't win, nobody wins. I just don't think that's the right way to do business. I want people to feel like there's a way that we can conduct ourselves and do business that they want to be on the same bus with you. They want to be on that island together, because if you do it the other way, you might win, but it will feel shallow and hollow, and there's not going to be a ton of people around you after that.
Yeah, very well said. I believe that there's room at the top for everyone, right? So,
You're living in a
play
world,
nice. Yeah,
right? Yeah.
right,
Play
right.
nice but win, right?
Yeah, play nice, be kind, but win at all
Yeah.
costs. Win, but be kind. Thank you. So, last question for you. What do you hope your leadership legacy would be?
Yeah, so that's really interesting. So at Prevalent, we had 3 or 4 people who, after Prevalent, started their own companies, were CEOs, ran other businesses, and were highly successful. I expect out of Cranium the exact same thing. I was personally involved at KPMG at helping people become partners and MDs. That was very exciting. The legacy always is about the people and whether or not you had an impact on thinking about how you brought them up and how they became leaders themselves. And I'm excited to see what happens after Cranium. I think we're going to have even more people who want to take that journey, who can take the skills and the lessons that we've learned together, and that they're going to go do some really, really incredible things.
Jonathan, it has really been amazing having this chat with you. You are an amazing, phenomenal leader. And I believe the Craniacs are so lucky to have you as their leader. Thank you for making the time to speak with me today.
Thank you very much. You're an official Craniac, and we really, really appreciate the time here. And what a great conversation. Thanks for setting this up.